Hello and welcome back to Parley. This one was paid for by Liliana. Hope you'll enjoy listening. Liliana says, "Afternoon, Captain. As per recent usual, I'm saving these until I have a really funny, stupid, chaotic idea. I'm here, so you know what that means. Following up on Quartermaster C's Parley with another opinion piece. This is a funny but mildly spicy one, so if you don't want to do it, I completely understand. As a chaotic demon waifu YouTuber once said, we are all parasocial. I want to get to know you a little bit, except not really, because it's funnier that way. Captain, please give us your genuine opinions on various political topics, but without ever stating what the things you're giving your opinions on actually are. For example, you know when they do that thing and it causes all those problems like X and Y? Yeah, I don't think that's cool. Ideally, we'd live in a world where that just didn't happen, but a lot of changes would have to be made first." I called this concept unidentified hot takes. This is fine by its very nature. I mean, you don't know what I'm talking about, right? No, in all seriousness, I think the entire thing about not sharing your political opinions is pretty unhealthy and kind of stems from a culture where people accept political opinions that are not really a worthy opinion for discussion. People think the thing, but there's no actual justified reason for the thing. And so, because a lot of people just hold unsubstantiated views, you can't have an organized conversation in public society if you let people express their opinions, because some people among that group are holding opinions that are basically just wrong. And they will just hold them, though, and our society has decided that that's okay. And so you can't discuss politics at a party. In my opinion, if you are around people that are worth talking to, there should be no problem discussing these subjects. There is no point in discussing things with the kind of people you would need to avoid talking about politics with. So, yeah, that applies to lots of people. A lot of people, their job or their livelihood involves communicating with people who there is really no point discussing stuff with. But that doesn't apply to me. All of you are totally worth discussing stuff with, and we have to respect each other's opinions here. So even if you did know what I was going to talk about, it doesn't matter because we can understand each other's reasoning. And you know what? If I hold an opinion and the reasoning behind it ends up seeming kind of janky to me, then I will stop holding that opinion. You don't need to die on the hill of your opinions. I am able to have actual valid opinions because I don't need to have those opinions. Nothing is stopping me from changing them. Therefore, I am empowered to have actual real opinions. So, if you are too, then we can proceed safely onward. This is a weird one. I thought this was going to be kind of hard to do. I don't really know. I think I'm just going to try. I prepared for this one for a little bit by just thinking about some views I hold, and now I'm just going to try to discuss them while obscuring what they're about. And you know what? I might mess up. I feel like I might just mess up. And so I wrote down a few, and I'll use as many or as few of them as I feel like I need, and we'll just talk for a little bit. I prepared for this one for a few minutes just to make sure I felt like I had like something to say. But it's probably not going to be that bad, right? I don't know. Maybe this is easy. Is this easy? Let's find out. Okay, so to very clearly delineate between subjects, since I'm not going to be actually referring to what I'm talking about, I'll just say this is subject A. So let's call it subject X, actually. So this is just X. Whenever I need to say the thing, I can substitute in X, or I'll just talk around it. Okay, so this is about the X phenomenon. Yeah, people are really addicted to this thing. Everywhere in human society, you see people extolling the virtues of this way of behaving, and it isn't worthwhile. There is no reason you need to do that. I mean, maybe people just feel like there isn't enough value in other ways of valuing things, but this way of valuing things is really toxic. I can't believe how much people care about this. Whenever people suggest pretty much anything they're thinking of doing with their lives, if it doesn't have this thing, people just say, nope, that that's just not good enough. I mean, people won't outright say that, but you always get the dirty looks, the distaste. People really extol this thing. I said people are really addicted to this subject. They are. It's a problem. I feel like because people value this thing so highly, this is why we can't have nice things. People need to commit themselves to empty things. I'm just saying things instead of X, which is making this worse. Maybe this is a little harder than I thought. Maybe this subject is bad for it. Maybe I'll try switching subjects, but that one's kind of bad. Yeah, people really overly focus on this phenomenon. I don't understand why people feel like that's so valuable. I always say that. I always instinctively say I don't understand why blah blah blah, but I understand exactly why people do that. I'm just saying that out of habit. I know precisely why people are addicted to this stupid, worthless thing. It's because they feel like that's the only thing there is. And that's not true. You can just do legitimately interesting things. You can have an approach to doing things that is interesting instead of this approach, and it will be good. But people are just not interesting. I and so they have to focus on valuing this thing. And the frustration for me is that when someone does something that is better but doesn't include this quality, getting a bit wound up. People reject the value of that thing for the most part. I don't know. I mean, to some extent, I think it's good to respect this thing. Like many addictions, a very small amount of it isn't bad. Or like sometimes it feels not really necessary, but it's something that happens. And there's nothing really wrong with it. If it was in moderation, it would be fine. But like alcohol and I don't know, other recreational drugs, this is just used way too much. And it's considered to be this normal, basic, expected thing rather than a thing that you do a little bit when it's called for, when the situation calls for that. It's not a mode, it's instead just the default. And this is like the worst possible default that you could ever have. I'm going to try switching subjects because I don't think that one was that good. I started weaker. Maybe I need to warm up to this subject a little bit. This is a little more difficult than I thought. But I also think that the picking the right subject to obscure the identity of might make it easier to do. So maybe this one will be easier. Okay, so this is going to be the second thing or thing Y, let's say. People just put these on everything. Dude, stop it. Stop doing this to every single everything, just every subject, ideas, uh, types of people, every abstract concept gets this thing. And it's ridiculous. We don't need that every single time. You don't have to always do this to every single phenomenon that you encounter. And what happens is that people don't understand where people are coming from, much as if they were talking in the way I am in this parlay, because you've done this thing to the subject, so that what? So people won't understand? So that only you understand? Why? Why do anything that way? Why do this thing for the express purpose of things being less clear? Why? Why would you do that? Imagine if that was someone's job. If somebody went around specifically working to and putting effort into crafting this thing, slapping this thing on things, and the only effect of doing that was just that less people understood the thing. You can just take a bit more time. Like, this is taking a shortcut to an absolutely comical degree, to a harmful, absurd, stupid degree. They're not degrees, by the way. That's a Warframe mechanic that is, well, not entirely unrelated to this subject, but no, that's not what I mean. That's not a very political hot take, is it? The degrees are just, they are what they are. No, people got to stop putting these everywhere. I think the problem is that this is what happens in our political environment. Society kind of maladapts to people doing this kind of stuff. People are putting this thing on everything, and so we've kind of adapted to it, and it seems good. It seems like if you stopped doing that, people can point to lots of reasons why, like, it's good. But when you think about how else you could be approaching the subject, it would be so much better if people just stopped doing that. As always, with this kind of subject, if we weren't talking about it in this comical, silly way, the problem isn't that it would be hard to come up with a better way of doing things. That's extremely easy most of the time. The problem is that you can't get from here to there. You can't transport us to the place that we would want to go. And that puts us in a situation where people are just going to keep doing this thing and acting like it's good. And its problems are going to get cemented into society, kind of built into the ground, slapping this thing all over everything. They'll slough off and become the soil from which society grows. And that's bad. That's gross soil that will give us only slime mold all over the place. I don't know where that metaphor is going, but you get the idea. Stop it. Don't water our ideological garden with this thing everywhere. We don't need that all over everything. It's not, I don't know, recyclable or whatever. They actually are recyclable, this thing. See, it turns into a bit of 20 questions. That's a concern I have. But indeed, these are often recycled or misused. They often get co-opted or twisted, and that's the thing about these things is that putting them all over everything so carelessly, so haphazardly, without really understanding what makes this kind of thing good when it is good, means that they get corrupted, they shift, they become something they maybe weren't intended to be, and that's caused a lot of problems. It can be really bad when a one of these is made this way and it isn't really thought of as a long-term thing. People just sort of do what they feel like doing at the time, and it becomes something different, or at best it just becomes nothing. It just does nothing. But again, I feel like the my issue with these things is that people don't think of what their effect is. They just think that's the thing you do because that's how you make this thing be a thing. You have to do this to it. You have to add this thing. You have to treat it like this. And if you don't do that, then it doesn't exist. Things just aren't real unless we do them this way. But no, you can just think for yourself and do it a different way. It's fine. Again, I it's not like I don't understand why people do this. And again, you can find people who point to many positive, apparently, at first it appears like a positive effect of this action, but it's bad. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure I like the idea of complaining literally just to complain, even if it isn't even about any real subject, even if this is what I'm being asked to do in this moment. But I wonder if I could give maybe some feedback. You just said to give your genuine opinion on the subject. It doesn't have to be in a specifically unproductive way. So let me think about it a little bit. Is there a way you could do that better? I mean, not doing it would be really good, but you do need to do a version of the thing. Like I understand that people want to perform an action in this moment. I just don't want them to perform this action. I don't want them to put this thing on a thing or to value that thing that much or put so much effort into it. And instead, it would be better if maybe people put a bit more effort into understanding instead of into slapping this thing all over everything. So I guess that would be the solution, but again, that doesn't totally solve the problem because sometimes you need this to delineate between things. And so this is really becoming like 20 questions, isn't it? I wonder if people feel like they know. People are going to guess in the comments what these are probably. And that's okay, but I wanted to say that I'm not going to answer any of them. I just won't. I usually don't have time to look at parlay video comments anyway, but I will just not answer any of the comments. So if a comment isn't answered, that doesn't mean that it's, I'm pre-deciding that I'm not going to answer any of them. Okay. Um, Maybe I'll try one more. Maybe I'll try one more because this one I don't have that much else to say about it. That's the thing. I view these topics as quite simple. They're not things that warrant that much discussion. To me, it's like it's pretty clear why it's bad, and I know why people do it, and you can't get people to stop doing it, and it's also completely unarguably bad. So what is really the point? And it's like impossible to change and impossible to disagree with. So what is the point? It's not at all impossible to disagree with. You can disagree with anything you want if you're enough of an idiot. Anyway, I'll do one more. This is something that people don't get. Everyone is given this thing, at least where I live, and they really shouldn't. you should need to earn this thing. You know how people receive this thing without any qualifications. Like they get this and there's really no reason they're being given it. It's just like because, like for existing. And it seems good if you think of it a certain way. It seems like, yeah, we should give people this thing. Everyone should get this thing. It's a basic thing that people should get. But you know what? You should need to be qualified to get this thing. You shouldn't just be able to have this super easily. It would even be sufficient, even a small amount of not giving people this thing would be good. It would even be sufficient to simply say that people need to say they want the thing for them to get it. I would prefer a different solution, but that would be good and that's doable. I guess you a tiny bit need to say to opt into getting this thing, but like barely though, not really. And I also people think that everyone should use this thing as well, and I also kind of disagree with that. The problem is that there are consequences if people don't. There have been times when we at least where I live, we had a huge problem because people didn't use this thing. But that's only because of exactly how didn't use this thing. If there were much more restrictions on how you get this thing instead of just giving it to everyone, and then because of group dynamics, certain people don't use it at a certain time, then that wouldn't be a problem. It would, in fact, I think the opposite would have happened in this situation I'm thinking of. Rather than it being a problem, it would have actually been a positive thing if only you restricted who got this thing a lot. I will say of the three hot takes in here, if you knew what this one actually is, this is by far the spiciest one. This is like you might get in a little bit of trouble for saying this in the right environment. I wouldn't say this if it wasn't me obscuring it. I have plausible deniability, and on a video that nobody on the internet will. I mean, and it's the internet. Come on, people will get mad no matter what I say. And I'm not even actually saying any specific opinion. I mean, I am, but you don't know what it is. This could be anything. But yeah, I really don't think people should in Xandernesia, my homeland that I have that definitely exists, Xandernesia, the real country Xandernesia from which I hail, that I'm definitely from, that exists and is real, and of which I am not just a member of the citizenry. And we use that Roman system where you elect people into government positions from time to time, and the purpose of that is really more just to get people to understand what's going on in the government, not really to like get them to actually do much, because we have a system that works, and really we just want people to understand. Xandernesia, you know that country. We all know about that country. Now we're talking about something specific that's definitely real and not a made-up country that is named after me. We do this. Not everybody gets this thing. In fact, are there places where not everyone is given this thing? Places that use the system in which you use this thing, I almost always give it to everybody. Although exactly how easy it is to use, again, that's the problem, right? Like everyone is currently given it, but not everybody uses it or is equally able to use it in the same way. And so we already aren't actually being equal. It's just a really shallow way of appearing equal. You wouldn't even want this thing to be given out equally. And the way it's not given out equally currently is a lie, and also not even a good way to not give it out equally. So why not just be honest that it isn't good to give this thing out equally and give it to, only some people? But there would be a lot of problems with that. People would say it was really bad. I just feel like if you did that, it would actually be quite good. It's just that a lot of people want to use this thing in a way that I don't think they should really be allowed to use it. And yeah, they would complain, of course, like they want to do that, right? But I don't care. In the confidence of this discussion, yeah, no, but that's just too bad. Like that's too bad. Unfortunately, the entire fabric of human society as it currently stands is based on the idea that we don't do the thing I'm suggesting, and that we do just give everybody this thing. But no, I don't think you should do that. I think that causes a lot of problems. Now, how do you actually give people this thing? The problem is, the reason you can't actually follow through with this is that any system by which you hand this out, any qualifications, which is what I want people to need, that you require, could be fiddled with. Like there would be shenanigans. You'd have to have some way to assure that nobody fiddled with it, and that just isn't really possible in politics. And so obviously it would be really bad if you did what I'm suggesting right now with no other extremely elaborate system of checks and balances. You can't do it. Like I don't actually want people to suddenly lose this thing because it just wouldn't work. But my point is that it's a gigantic problem that this thing is given out to everybody. And I would almost go so far as to argue that it would be still a huge problem, but actually a little bit less of a problem if only people weren't given this thing universally. I feel like even considering the many issues it would cause, it might actually have a net positive effect, but I think people would think of it as a net negative, which is such an embarrassing place for humanity to be, but honestly happens a lot if you think about it. Things where a better system would appear worse to people. A really simple example of something that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about to illustrate that concept is in CGP Gray's video about boarding groups, like airplane boarding groups. He talks about how you could make it's way faster boarding where everybody lined up in an exact order and filed into the plane and got right into their seats, and it would be great. And you could do that. But because it would require more steps and more organizing of the line and stuff, people would think it was slower. It would feel slower, even though it would be way faster. It's like that. That's a thing. I feel like it's like that. This would feel, my suggestion is more doing something. Giving everyone the thing feels like we're not doing anything. That's just we're making no decision and giving it to everyone. But that's an illusion, right? That's like the trolley problem, where if you don't pull the lever, the train kills three people, and if you pull the lever, the train only kills one person. But then you like pulled the lever though, so it's bad. No, no, it's not. You still killed three people if you don't pull the lever. Just because you didn't perform a physical action doesn't mean that you like didn't do it. You were the only relevant agent in that situation, so you are guilty of not pulling the lever. At least in Xandernesia you are, but in our current society they would say, well, you didn't do anything. You didn't do a physical action, therefore you're not guilty. Unless it was like your job to pull the lever or not, or something. And even then, there might be problems. But that's just stupid. I feel like a lot of people can probably agree here that that's stupid. Doing a choice that requires less action doesn't make it less of a choice just because that's like the easier thing. That would be like saying that if you, well, I mean, it is less of a choice in that people didn't think about it as much. But my point is that we're still choosing, one of two options. And people would feel, if they did it my way, people would feel like, oh, but that's like a specific way of doing it rather than the not a way of doing it where you just give it to everybody. But that is an illusion. That doesn't, like, no, it doesn't matter. And then people would criticize it more because it feels like, well, that's different than the like default way of doing it. And this has been a problem in my life in a lot of ways, actually. People overly criticize things that are not the common thing to do, even if the common thing to do it has like a horrible track record, like a terrible track record, and the new thing has no track record. In other words, we have no idea how good it will be to do the new thing, but it just feels like more of a choice or more of a thing than the commonly done thing. Even if the commonly done thing is terrible, people seem to favor it simply because it, like, I don't even know really, like, has a track record. Just because people have done everything, that doesn't matter. I don't know. This one weirds me out a little bit. Okay, we're getting a bit wound up. I'm gonna say the third one, I thought that was a better attempt. That was better, right? Maybe the other two weren't as good. I still feel like I said what I had to say about them, though. I hope this was fun. I hope I did okay. It was a little harder than I thought. That was a little more difficult than I thought. I got a little more angry than I thought it was. That's okay. I mean, normally I don't mind this, so I'm just venting a bit. Why not? Seems like a good opportunity to do so. Something I want to say that's kind of funny. It was quite satisfying as venting, even though I didn't actually tell you the thing that I think. Like, I feel better and less frustrated about this, even though I didn't tell you what I think. I still kind of went through I mean, I did. I just didn't tell you exactly what the issue is. which kind of proves that when you vent to someone, they don't need to understand. I do often feel better, specifically when the audience has understood. Not necessarily all of you. I mean, like if I'm talking about something that's bothering me, sometimes I do really care that the person I'm speaking to specifically understands the thing that I'm saying. Not just that they listened and I got to get it out, but that they specifically know what I mean by it. But a lot of the time, I don't care about that. And I think that this was an interesting example of that. I was kind of frustrated about one of these things lately, and I feel better now, which is weird because I didn't do anything. Really, I didn't talk about it exactly. I just kind of acted through. I went through the motions as if you had talked about it. That's very strange. Anyway, cool, a weird one. Um, yeah, I think this one is hard. I'll be honest, I thought this one seemed quite gimmicky at first, but I'm kind of getting into it with the that third one. Once I felt like I was doing it better. This is challenging to do effectively on the spot in a way I didn't notice. Um, I I also really strongly disagree with the joke but premise. You said this person who you were taking this idea from says, "I want to get to know you a little bit, except not really because it's funnier this way." And I totally disagree. Like if you all want to intimately describe your opinions about esoteric subjects to me, I actually want to know that for the most part. Have some common sense about what you're sharing with me about your personal life. It's not really about personal life stuff either. I don't really want to know that. But in general, yeah, like I'm totally for it. Sounds good. We you know, I do think I should say that many of these opinions I have, I enact. Maybe I shouldn't tell you this. But I basically told you it, so I will. I essentially do the three things that I talked about but didn't tell you about in my career. They're things that are of relevance to me. I am walking the walk, not just talking the talk of complaining about these things. I lead a community, which is not the same as leading a government or being part of a political system, but a meaningful part of a political system. But I do lead a community, and I do, for the most part, these three things are some of the larger defining features of the way I run the community that I run with all of you. So I don't know why I'm telling you that. That feels kind of counterproductive because now people are just going to try to guess, but I already said I'm not going to tell anyone. And that would just be tedious. Is that really worth your time? If you're thinking about watching this video over and trying to figure it out, I just want to ask you, do you really think that's worth your time? Like, you know how many other parlay there are, or just like other good games? Just other good games. Shall we begin listing? No, we won't. Thank you very much for the parlay, Liliana. Thank you for the support. If you want to get your own parlay video like this or in spirit like this, you can do so using the link in the description. Talk to you all soon.